Hi there, my name is Joshua Glidden. I am a fifth year senior here at Salem State University, graduating a little less than a month this May. I major in communications with a concentration in media production and a minor in interactive design and multimedia. Now, what does that mean? When people ask me what my major is, I essentially liken it to film. We deal with all the major aspects of a camera. We have classes where we try to create short films, one of my true passions, and just figure out everything about the inner workings of a camera and a news broadcast and studio work. It basically is studio production mixed with film, mixed with broadcasting, all into it. Deals with everything in relation to the producing of the media, which is a very broad concept. My minor is not a communications minor, it's an art minor, but it deals with many aspects of communications. It deals with creating websites, it deals with creating posters that you could use for advertisements, it deals with all those things. So this major and concentration and minor has truly helped me grow and learn in the field of communications today. And when people ask me what communications is, it's a very broad question. It's all around us. And throughout this video, we're not only going to take a look at what communications is, but how it affects us as a population and us as people, and the different types of people that work in the field. And not only in my concentration of media production, but we're going to visit advertising, journalism, PR as well. So I hope you guys are ready. This is a look into communications.
Tell us who you are, what you do.
My name is Sal Russo. I'm the Executive Director of Salem Access Television, Salem, Mass.
How long have you been doing this?
Over 12 years I've been at this location.
Okay. How much of communications do you think involves media?
A lot. Communications is basically media. So you need to have media to communicate, and for public access, it's basically conveying community events, getting the message out, and how we do it here is by using video and audio, so producing programming. So communications for public access, for us primarily, is programming. So we go out and cover events with cameras and record the audio, and then put a program together and air it on our channels.
What does a typical day usually consist of?
Anything and everything. What my responsibility here is day-to-day operation. Like I always say to anybody, don't write a list of what you plan on doing tomorrow, because when you come in, there's always something else that comes up, and you may never get to that list. So it's just making sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. And if any emergencies come up, I take care of them as soon as possible.
In your own way, define communications. Tell us who you are, what you do.
All right, my name is Patrick Kennedy, and I am the Program Director here at Salem Access Television.
What does a typical day usually consist of?
Well, for me and my job, my main job here at Salem Access TV is to actually look over our 3 channels, keep them running, and keep all of our shows keep running on the air. So there's a lot of upkeep with the actual channels, the broadcasting, a lot of getting all these different programs ready in the right format, and then creating schedules and things like that so everything runs accordingly.
In your own way, define communications.
Hello, my name is Steve Spencer. I work at Salem Access Television, and I'm the Training and Production Director.
All right. How long have you been doing this?
I've been working at Salem Access TV for almost 3 years.
Okay. Now, in your own personal way, try to define communications.
Communications is presentation for a purpose.
Communications is a way of getting information from one thing or one person to another.
The simplest form of communications is a message sent, a signal sent to a receiver.
And it depends on whatever your particular job is in communication. For us, we're in public access. So our primary presentation is producing programs for the city of Salem. That's what we do. That's what our communications is. That's the most important. We do other things as bulletin boards for events for the city of Salem. That's a different way of communicating. But our primary goal is producing programming. And if you were in a different communications field, such as marketing, advertising, you would be handling your presentation of your mission statement or whatever your primary goal is appropriately. So communications covers a lot of different things. And for us, it's really community events programming. That's our primary goal.
Media plays a big role, especially these days where everyone's technology are technologically advanced as well as very computer literate. So media plays a big role in getting whatever type of information it is. And by information, that can be news, that can be written comics, that can be movies, that can be videos about people's cats. It doesn't really matter what the information is, but media obviously plays a big role. Television, I think, is the biggest part of communications, even though movies might make more money, even though the internet is probably more popular. But even since the 1940s, television has really just kind of reigned supreme when it comes to communications. And even these days, a lot of people will turn on the news if they want to know what's going on, even though they can go on the internet and do that, but there's still something about a news anchor telling you what's going on to kind of reinforce that communication.
My name's
Tell us
Alexa
who you
Ganassi,
are, what you do.
and I'm a communications major at Salem State University, and I'm focusing on media productions.
How long have you wanted to do this?
I've always liked film, and I've always loved cameras and being productive with that, but just recently, as of last semester, I got into film and actually decided that I wanted to do this. So about a semester.
In your own way, define communications.
I guess it's so broad. It covers so many things like journalism, advertising. I think communications is, I don't know how to define it. It's just like, it brings a lot of people together, and I don't know how to define this.
You're looking at one of the first draft storyboards for this video. Now, I never claimed to be an artist, but that's not what matters. What matters is the message-making process, and not only in media production, but in all aspects of communications. Now, as you can see, the storyboard is, it's fairly similar to the video, but there are some differences, like that park ranger interview fell through. But I'm going to go over the message-making process, and not only in media production, but in all aspects of communications as well.
Before we go back towards media production, I want to talk about the other three facets of communications real quick. Journalism, advertising, public relations, the big three. All three have their similarities and differences. I find journalism to be one of the most intriguing because journalism's always been a little close to me. I was thinking about doing journalism. I've always been interested in the news and the way we absorb it as a population. So I go to my brother, who is actually a journalism major from Salem State, graduating in the late 90s. His name is Jason. And he got to me and was like, hey Jay, I think I'm gonna do journalism because it's interesting, it just seems very cool and very matter of fact. And he says to me, I don't think it's right for you. You need to be a very special type of person for that. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, to be a journalist, you need to be able to do whatever it takes. And I said, I don't really follow, because I was a little confused because it didn't seem like a cutthroat business to me at the time. So he goes, you need to be able to ask questions and get information almost any way that's necessary. And that always stuck with me because it made me think about how the audience of journalism and news reporting is different from the rest of the audiences of the communications concentrations. Like media production, a film is fiction. It doesn't have to be true in any way, shape, or form. In fact, the more true it is, oftentimes the more boring the movie can be. Obviously, there are documentaries that are very fascinating and things of that nature, but fiction is why we watch movies. And when it comes to news broadcasts, obviously media production can also be tied into journalism because, yes, short films are fiction, but working in a news broadcast room is anything but fiction. That's very real, and you're help reporting the thing that journalism found 2 months ago. And so it's very different and also very tied in to media production. It's just the audience of journalism, the audience of news is just always getting the truth. For the most part, they're supposed to be getting the truth. Obviously, there is news that isn't always true, but that is what makes journalism so different, the truth and the way the audience absorbs the information, and I've always found that fascinating. Advertising is a breed in and amongst itself. I took writing for media my sophomore year, and we had to create an ad campaign. So I said, okay, it sounds easy enough. It's not. It's actually very difficult. I created an ad campaign for Oakley because I have several pairs of Oakley sunglasses. I like Oakley products. I was like, yeah, I'll do that. That seems interesting. And obviously it was just a school project, but thinking about the inner workings of an ad campaign and how difficult it must be to reach people in the real world, if you will, is just mind-boggling because everyone is different, and yet you have to group these people as one to try to sell this product that you need to sell to keep your job. And even though every person is different, they have a way to group people together, and I've always found that fascinating. I was in the city a few weeks ago. I went to Boston to see a concert, and I was coming up the subway. I was going up the subway stairs, and I see an ad for a fantasy baseball website. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I like fantasy sports. And the biggest letters in that ad were free and 300 million. Everything else was obviously large enough to read, but they want the things that people are most interested in, money and free things, to really pop out and catch the eye. And that's just what I love about advertising, because once again, every one of these concentrations deals with the audience in its own unique way. Advertising tries to get people to buy a product no matter what. Obviously there are restrictions, but to each his own. And just the way advertising works has always intrigued me, because I was coming up those stairs and I see free to sign up, could win $300 million. And I was like, oh man, I would love to win $300 million. If I wasn't doing 1,000 other things right now, I would totally do this. And what's to say a regular guy who just loves baseball would be walking up those subway steps one day and see that? He would probably sign up because, according to the ad, it's hassle-free and you can make big bucks. And that is what is just amazing about advertising, the way it truly interacts with its audience in the general public, and the way it groups people together in order to sell a product. It's just amazing. Now, public relations is its own unique brand in and of itself, because unlike advertising, media production, journalism, public relations deals with things after the fact for the most part. Obviously, there are facets of public relations that deal with current events and current workings of a company, but when you think about public relations, it is always dealing with things bad Let's be honest, when bad things happen. A few years ago, I remember when a few big shopping companies, or it happens every so often when a big shopping company gets credit card numbers released, and all this customers' credit information is released to the public or it goes online. That's public relations, because these people have to work with the public and try to put a positive spin on something extremely negative. And once again, dealing with the audience and the consumer and the general public in its own unique way, dealing with the public when they're angry, when they're upset, when there's a backlash towards something. And that's what makes public relations so interesting as well.
Don't you just love monster music? Well, in downtown Salem, you're going to hear a lot of it. Because here in downtown Salem, as you may know, it's the city of witches. But it's also the city of something else. Affordable and entertaining and educational local access capabilities. I'm of course talking about Salem Access Television. Let's go inside and take a look. Well, of course we have the industry standards in film and software editing. How the heck do you think we make such amazing programs? I know, I didn't mean to raise my voice like that, I'm sorry. All right, all righty. My best to margin the kids.
You're watching a PSA
Okay,
I had
goodbye.
to make for my video editing class this semester. Now, for this PSA, I had to think about what I was trying to convey to the audience. I wanted to get the information about Salem Access across without seeming too serious or boring. So I wanted to go with a generic comedy, generic humor route. And I think it worked out fairly well. Now, especially for PSAs and any movie you're making, you have to think about what the audience is going to think about it. While making this PSA, I always kept that in my mind. At every shot, I said, what do I think the audience will think about this? The first shot, when I'm walking down the street, took us about 5 takes because either a car would drive by and I would like, well, the audience would be able to hear this, or the sun or the lighting wasn't right. So whenever you're doing anything, not even just a media production, in any form of communications, you have to think, will the audience or will whoever is going to see this appreciate it and like it?
Now, even as I'm sitting here finishing up editing this video, right now it's at about 17 minutes, 30 seconds long. I'm still scrubbing through it to see if there are parts that need fine-tuning, or to see if there are any parts of the video that some viewers or some people of the audience of the video might not like. Especially since this is a video for incoming freshmen, which is what the prompt said. I want them to be able to relate towards me. I want them to be able to think about the major of communications and whether or not they want to take part in it. So that is what I have in mind as I'm editing through this video and scrubbing through this footage to see if that hits home every single frame. As I'm sitting here editing this, it got me thinking. The original question, what is communications? If anyone watching this wondering what communications is, I hope the video has answered it for you in some way, shape, or form. After all, that was the point of this video. But let me just leave you with this. Communications is everywhere. As I've already stated, I stated that in the very beginning. It's everywhere. It is in everything you do, nearly everything you see. But most importantly, communications is getting some point across to something or someone in some way or another. That's essentially what communications is. When you boil it down, whether it be media production and working with cameras and in broadcast studios, whether it be with journalism and working with a laptop and putting the news on the web or TV, whether it be an advertising executive trying to really sell a product for his firm, or whether it be a PR rep trying to solve a snafu. It is everywhere. And I think that is the most important part about communications. Audience matters most. Whoever you are targeting, whoever you're selling your product to, whoever you're showing your product to matters most in this field. Without them, we wouldn't have a job. Without them, we wouldn't have anything to do. People always need news. People always need media. People always need something to buy. And that is what communications is, and that is what makes it so important. So I just want to leave you with a little analogy I had. I think it works perfectly. And it also goes to show, if you want to get a shot, if you want to do something, if you want to film something, if you want to make something, create something, go ahead and do it. You can always fit it into something, because I'm proud of the shot, and I think the analogy works perfect. So that is communications, and I leave you guys with this. There's one thing I love in life, it's a good analogy. And I think the perfect analogy and metaphor for communications, advertising specifically, but still communications as a whole, is fishing. Now, how could fishing be an analogy for advertising or communications? Well, it's a good question. Well, just like advertising, fishing is all about timing, placement, and just a little bit of luck. You have to know what your audience likes, in this case the fish. You have to take into account the time of day. You have to take into account where you are. You have to scout for locations. You have to make sure everything is as perfect as it could possibly be. And just like fishing and advertising, you could do everything the right way and still come up empty-handed. It all depends on the audience and the consumer. For example, I could get a bite on this lure right now, just like I might go get a coffee from a billboard I saw on my way over to the lake. That's how life works. And especially in today's high-tech age, I just find it humorous how something so simple and so primitive can be something as so similar as to something like communications and advertising. Because just like on a bustling street on Manhattan or Los Angeles, you can still find the same principles out on a pond or lake. And that's what I find fascinating about it, and that's why I think it's such a good analogy. Well, back to fishing.